What's up, you beauties? Welcome to HW Postgame Show, where we're going to talk all things Philadelphia Flyers. I'm Jim, joined as always by Jack Smith, and we have a guest for tonight's postgame show. Manny Benavidez of Brotherly Puck and Brotherly Pod is going to join us. Yeah, guys, you saw it. Flyers curb stomped yet again by the New York Rangers, and by a final score of 8-3. Everybody on the other team scored. Giroux, Hayes, Couturier scored for the Flyers. Boys, oh my God. Like, what is even the word for this? The day after Chuck Fletcher's press conference, they didn't do many favors leading up to the press conference, losing to the Devils and the Islanders a couple times. Literally the day after the press conference, they come out and they do this. What is going on? What's going on in your guys' mind? Let's get to our guest first here. Manny, what's going on in your mind? What's going on with this team? How do you feel?
Terrible. I mean, there's no other way about it. Like, the thing that I keep thinking of is that meme of the Spider-Mans all pointing at each other because, the players seem to be pointing to Chuck Fletcher saying, hey, let's do something. We need help. It's a cry for help. And Fletcher's pointing at the players going, hey, I believe in you guys. You guys, we've got a good team here. We're going to win. We're going to make the playoffs. We're still in it. Newsflash. Like the Bruins are about to get a point. They're going to overtime now. So that's another point back of them. They've got numerous games in hand. The Flyers can't beat anybody right now, and they look terrible when they do. People are pointing at Hart for being, not stopping anything. Hart, I'm sorry, but you got to point at the defense too. They can't do anything. The players on the ice can't do anything. The coach is making terrible moves too. Everybody's to blame here, and everybody's looking at each other to pull them out of this, and they're not going to, because nothing has changed. There's been no movement on the trade front. There's been nobody sent down to Lehigh Valley. There's been absolutely nothing. We had a GM come out and literally say, I'm trying my best, but I can't do nothing. Boy, this trade market's really tough. Well, no kidding. You knew it was a flat cap in the offseason, didn't you? You knew that when you signed Eric Gustafsson, didn't you? But don't worry, he's as advertised. This is what you wanted? You wanted a guy that could barely break in this lineup now? Sam Moran's ahead of him now on the depth chart. Played a decent game from what I've heard. But Gustafsson? You got to be kidding me. As advertised. And listen, don't get me wrong. He's not going to come out and throw the guy under the bus. No GM should do something like that. Let's be perfectly honest. But when you sit there and you tell people the defense has been terrible, we've given up 27 goals. Well, it's a lot more now because the Rangers got quite a few more today off the rush. We can't zone exit. We can't do anything. Well, sorry, but Gus is part of that. He is, whether you like it or not. Provorov's part of that, whether you like it or not. Sanheim, Myers, the list goes on and on and on. Braun's been the best guy in the last 3 weeks, and that's pretty sad.
Yeah, Jack, that's going to be tough to follow up, man, but go ahead and follow up.
He hit everything on the head that we had been discussing and seen, and the main thing is, and you had said he's not going to throw anybody under the bus, and he's real right, he's not, but it also felt like he was kind of defending his one move in the offseason, and it's like, you really take us all for assholes, don't you? We're not watching. Like, they're an absolute travesty and a joke, which we've been saying all along. As you said, Jimmy, they didn't do him any favors going into that press conference. Now for this to be the direct game after what the Rangers did to us last week, like, I don't know how somebody doesn't get fired at this point. Like, they're talking about Yo now because of the penalty kill. I'm still leaning Terrian because I think hasn't done anything since he's been here. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if they let Vigneault go because it's just that bad, and they can't make any trades. Fletcher's still pulling my job is too hard, which is so friggin' sad. Like, there are people who defended him yesterday, and a lot of them today were already regretting that. And I get it. It's flat cap, as Manny said. We everybody knew that. He signed Gustafsson to a $3 million contract. Everybody else in the league did something and got better. Teams that were already very good got better. Teams in our division got better. Everybody got better except for what? The Buffalo Sabres and us. And even the Sabres at least tried and added Taylor Hall, for God's sake. What did we do? Absolutely nothing. Complete joke. They're all. It wouldn't surprise me if nothing got done because it seems like the plan was this season means nothing. We need to do whatever we can to get to next season. And because there was such inaction, the wheels have completely fallen off, and we're seeing what's happening because of the neglect. So if nobody gets fired and nothing changes, that tells me that's exactly what the plan was, and that's embarrassing to say the least. But for people to have any kind of defense for Fletcher and what his asshole press conference was. After this, he better have another one soon. Like, he got or do something because how can we sit here and be like, are you serious? What, Dave Scott saying he wants to win, and look at it. They don't just lose. They get embarrassed almost every game now. Like, that has to be answered for. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, they're losing in embarrassing fashion now. I mean, in the beginning of the season, they were winning games, and it was kind of like we were all waiting either for the wheels to fall off or waiting for this team to, kind of get it together a little bit. And unfortunately, we're seeing the wheels completely fall off. They went from being, not fun to watch, at least for me personally, to just, oh my God, now I can't stop watching because it's so bad. Like, how bad can it actually get? And if you were going to tell me this last March, that this would be the Flyers now, a year later, there'd be no way in hell. I would have bet everything that I owned that was never going to happen. This almost, you know why this feels worse than the Hackstall era for me? It's because we had hope. We had expectations before the season, at the end of last season. I had my hopes up, and I'm going to go back to all the stuff Fletcher said in the offseason. We knew they were excuses, but we were like, okay, it's kind of justified, the things that he was saying. It's kind of like, all right, well, there is an expansion draft coming up again. Okay, well, there is, the unexpected flat cap. He already had built-in excuses for not making any moves. And the disappointing thing for me, we talked about it yesterday, is I felt that he used yesterday's press conference to use those excuses instead of holding himself a little bit more accountable and saying the reason that the team, and if you want to talk about the mental state, I'm not going to so much touch on that because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what these guys are going through. I don't think it's as bad as some people would have you make it out to be. I think these guys are probably pretty pampered. I mean, let's face it, they're professional athletes, right? These guys aren't struggling. So I have a hard time. Not that I don't have sympathy, because I know that you're human beings. I know that everybody's different. Everybody struggles. But I have a hard time, agreeing with that because let me just get off. I'll go back to Fletcher. How do you not foresee, these younger kids having a tougher time? They needed vets anyway, let alone for this year. He dropped the ball. As much as I loved Fletcher last year, we're seeing like a complete 180, and I'm just there's been no middle. Like, he's either been very good or it's like, dude, did you forget that they had a season this year? Because it's just been pathetic, and I'm not sure. It seems just like everybody's kind of quitting a little bit. I'm not sure what else Vigneault can do with these players. Manny, you mentioned sending guys down. That actually hasn't even crossed my mind. That's an option. Yep. Fletcher mentioned in the press conference last night that he'd like to get some guys up. I think you spoke of Tanner Lazinski, Wade Allison, and I'm missing one other player. But why not start now? Start, getting some messages. I don't know what else. I don't know what else they can do.
Go ahead, Jack.
No, they're at their wits' end at this point. They can't do much of anything, and it's their own fault. This is a hole that they dug themselves. You could see it a mile away. We tried to be optimistic at the beginning of the season. Even at the signing, we were all like, hey, Chara is still available, by the way, guys. Are we in on this? We had early reports that we were, but I think that was kind of, covered with the fact that there was all that Line A talk. And it kind of took our eyes off of what was actually needed with this team. And we just had confidence because we looked so good right up into the bubble, the beginning of the bubble. We did win a playoff round, and then we took a team that was better than us to Game 7 somehow. So while we had some issues, we still ultimately felt this was a very good team, and we were trending the right direction, and Hart was going to be great. Provorov's the candidate and what have you. And we started off the season winning. And I think the very first sign was that 6-1 loss to Buffalo, because look how bad they are, and it's like, we knew that then they weren't very good. Oh, it was an anomaly. We shut them out the next time, and then the Boston games kind of happened. Like, all right, they're a cup contender. Then we won. We took care of business against teams like the Devils. I think the very first time we played the Rangers, we had nobody. We still took them to overtime, and then the next time we played them, we beat them. And then at some point, I don't know what game it was exactly, everybody just stopped completely showing up. Goals were going in bunches. They're not even in games anymore. Like, I'm okay with losing if it's like close and they tried, but if they're down 4-5-0 in the first 10 minutes of the game, or 2-0 in the first period, and by the time you get your drink and come back in the second period, it's doubled. It's unbelievable how quickly they go down in games and are digging themselves out of a hole. Like, they're never ever in it, and these are teams that they could be so much better than. Zibanejad had another natural hat trick. That's probably the first time it's ever happened. Like, you have a natural hat trick. Next time you play that team, you have another natural hat trick. Natural hat trick. They've scored 17 goals on us to our 3 in the last 2 games. Like, what? These are 80s numbers. Like, this is ridiculously bad.
I'm glad that you mentioned Mika Zibanejad, Jack, because I don't know about how you guys feel, because you're right, in the Philly area, in the Jersey area, but like, TSN sent me an update, and the update says, remember me? New York Rangers forward Mika Zibanejad scores 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists for the second time in 9 days against the Flyers. He is the first player ever to score 6-point consecutive games against the same opponent. Gretzky didn't do that. Lemieux didn't do that. Mike Bossy didn't do that. Nobody has done that. This team finds new ways to lower the bar. Like, it can't get much lower than this. I don't know what else has to be done for people to sit there and say, there's something wrong with this team. And it can't just be, well, the young guys that are single are lonely. And listen, I understand. Okay, it's COVID. Everybody goes through a tough time. I got news for you. Married people go through a tough time too. People with kids go through a tough time too. People that are out of work are going through a tough time too. People are losing their businesses. They're going through a tough time. Like, this is affecting everybody. And don't tell me that it's every young player, because last time I checked, Joel Farabee was doing pretty damn good on this team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Carter Hart was the savior in the playoffs last year, and he was in a bubble. Mm-hmm. Now he can't stop anything, and the defense in front of him is a tatters. This is beyond ridiculous, like, just beyond ridiculous. How this team can continually trot out. Like, 2 weeks ago, Dave Scott was like, we're going to be real aggressive, real aggressive. Well, yesterday we saw Chuck Fletcher's aggressively calling people, but nothing's happening. He basically came out and said right away, we're not sellers. How do you watch a game like this again today? And you're sitting there, you need to free up cap space. That means you need to start making a trade, and that means you might have to sell somebody. It means, as sad as it is, Scotty Lawton is a UFA. He might have to go. Yep. Michael Raffl, you've been here a while, might have to go. And you know what? You're not going to get much for Raffl. Lawton might get you some nibbles. There might be some teams out there that'll give you a second-round pick for sure, and maybe even a little bit extra if they can get a guy like Scott Lawton. That's a guy that might do something in the playoffs, that might put a team over the top for a little bit of extra depth at forward. But you know what? It also does. It frees up money so that you can go and make a move that you need to do, so that you don't have to beg Nashville, please take Shane Gostisbehere, who we know you don't want. They don't want him. They don't want him to replace Ryan Ellis. That's right. A joke. Yeah. They don't want him to replace Matthias Ekholm. That's a joke. That's $4.5 million that they do not want. Yep. They just don't. If you can free up some money, any money at all, you know what? Make a deal with Scott Lawton. If you really want to re-sign him, tell him, dude, we'll sign you, but we're going to have to trade you for the time being. It's happened before. This is not something new. Teams do this.
Yeah, I hope they can bring him back, because he's one of the few players that I've somewhat liked this season. Hasn't always been perfect, but yeah. And what I wanted to bring up, this is Fletcher's fault because part of the reason he can't get anything done isn't just the flat cap and the salary cap and COVID, whatever. Every team is not like these GMs are not stupid. They know the situation that the Flyers and Fletcher are in. So why they're gonna hold their feet to the fire? They know that they don't have a choice. They have no wiggle room for anything. They're gonna hold out for the best possible deal because we're in such a horrible spot. And as more and more games like tonight happen, it's only gonna get worse. He's like, Fletcher, remember that deal we talked about where you're giving me 3 first-round picks and God knows what else? Suddenly it's looking a little bit better, right? You might not even be in Philly after what this shit keeps up. You're gonna have to do something. And that's his fault for putting the team in this position to begin with. So if the deals aren't going to get easier with these performances, they're going to get worse. So he can be aggressive all he wants. He can have 3 teams on the phone at the same time and say, I'm staying up day and night making phone calls, but he's in a shitty situation because of the team he put together because he was looking past this season. And if he doesn't figure something creative out quick, there is no way outside of firing somebody that they can, or selling, just flat out selling, that they can salvage this season in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, it's his own fault. So I'm tired of hearing the whole, my job's too hard, COVID, flat cap. You knew all that going in, as you said, Manny. Everybody knew all that shit going in. And now here we are. You put us in this situation. You need to get us out of it, or there should be hell to pay.
And guess what? Next year's a flat cap too, guys.
Yeah.
And the year after that, too.
So what are we going to do? We're just going to wait out the flat cap, right?
Yeah, right?
It sounded like, and Jack, you made a point of saying this. It sounded like you came out yesterday and was like, guys, my job's extra hard this year. If things don't work out, there's always next year. And as a fan, how sick are you of hearing, a couple years, the Flyers will be ready to compete in 2 years. The kids will be up or this and that. Like, they're here. Like, the kids are here, and this is what we got. They went out. I'm an AV fan. I like his personality. I like his persona. I like the vibe that he brings to this team. But there's a disconnect somewhere, whether he doesn't have the roster that he wants or whether his system is not for these players. And here's another thing with that, because I have heard that, and that could be the case. Here's what I would like, though. I'm tired of changing the coach to fit the players. It's time to bring in different players. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but there's nowhere else to go, right? Before we get on that train a little bit, I wanted to point something out about Mika Zibanejad, since we were talking about him a little bit ago. 5 games against the Flyers this year, 14 points, 6 goals, 8 assists. Against everybody else this year, I don't know how many games the Rangers have played, but I'm pretty sure it's over 20, 25 games. 4 goals, 8 assists. 6 goals and 8 assists just against the Flyers in 5 games. In 3 games, actually, because he didn't score in 2 of the games. That's insane to me. Is he that good? They can't stop Mika Zibanejad? In 1 period, he's done it to him. In 2 periods, I'm sorry. It's insane to me. Dude, I was out to dinner tonight for my brother's birthday. I was following the game in the first period. I saw it was 2-3-0. Put my phone down for a couple minutes. I go back to check the score, and I see 6-0. I'm like, wait, is this a glitch? Is ESPN showing me last week's game? And I was just in disbelief. Like, I had to laugh. I'm like, well, I can't get angry. Like, this is it. Like, what am I going to get angry for? There's nothing more to get angry about, And it's not even apathy anymore, because I do care. Like, I was invested in this team. I wanted to see them do well. I at least wanted to be entertained during all this COVID stuff, because there's something to do. Watching hockey for me is something to do. And instead, it's like, okay, well, we get to watch them get their asses handed to them night in and night out by better, more physical, more skilled teams, right? Let's face it. If the team that they're playing is not bigger than them, they're most likely more skilled than they are this year. And I think we kind of said it before the season started, Jack, that we're not sure if the Flyers are going to be able to compete with the Islanders, with the Bruins, with the Capitals for 8 games this year. And we're seeing that they can't. They're just getting bullied. They're getting beat up, and they're getting outclassed, outscored, outskilled, outgoalied, you name it. I mean, they just can't play defense as a team. And I want to kind of ask Manny this. I'm interested to hear your opinion here, Manny. We talked about letting coaches go a little bit. Michel Therrien is directly responsible, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the team defense and the power play, both of which not great. Power play scored a couple goals tonight. If somebody's let go, who would you let go? I'm leaning more towards Tarian, but what are your thoughts in letting somebody go? Would it even send a message to this team? Does it do anything? Is it more for the fans? What are your thoughts?
I don't know if it'll do anything. I mean, they've tried numerous different players on the power play, and it's the same effect. Yeah. So unless it's the strategies that's letting them down, but it's a pass first mentality on this team. That's how it is. So you can't pass the puck into the net. You got to shoot it. You're not going to be beating goalies that way. So if you want to fire Michel Therrien, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. He hasn't done a stellar job from any fan's perspective. The power play is atrocious. The defense is a shambles. But again, you can look at it as, okay, so the defense is a shambles, but who didn't address the defense?
Mm-hmm.
Chuck. So if Chuck fires Michel Therrien, that's Chuck Fletcher basically telling AV, the guy that you wanted that's here, that's your boy, that's your buddy behind the bench, well, I just got rid of him.
Scapegoat.
And that's a shot across the bow saying, you're next. Because if you don't turn this around, it's on you. And for a guy that in the press conference yesterday basically said, it's my responsibility. This is my team. This is all of us. He is right. Listen, the players have blame. The coaches have blame. The management has blame. And you know what? I'd be interested to know what order you guys place that blame in. I still think that the players are at number one, but Chuck is right there because he didn't address the defense. He just didn't. Like, how many more defense pairings do you want to shake up? How many more times do you want to put Braun with Provorov? How many more times do you want to put Sanheim with Myers? I mean, it's just not working. Like, it doesn't matter. They came in here with 8 defensemen plus on the roster, like ready, like NHL defensemen. And none of them are working. None of them are working.
You remember before the season, they said they were going to try the whole offensive zone, defensive zone thing with, I think it was Provorov, Braun, and Gustafsson. Offensive zone face-offs, they were going to try Gustafsson out there. Defensive zone draws, they were going to pop Braun out there with Provorov. And right then, we should have knew that this was all going to be BS, right? Like, come on. Like, go get him an actual defensive partner. Enough with the experimenting. Enough with the tinkering. Just go get him a partner. Like, Matt Niskanen, if he was here, he was only going to be here for one more year. They're going to have to find somebody anyway. I'm just fed up, man. It was just
Here's the real danger, though, because if they don't do anything, I think you run some serious risk of really doing some damage to these players.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if Provorov continues, like, he's struggling.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no bones about it. He's struggling. If he continues for the rest of the season with this defense core and no help, what's he going to look like next year? You think he's just going to turn the switch and become the same Ivan Provorov as he did last time? He's going to need some help.
You start to doubt yourself a little bit.
And what about Carter Hart, the franchise goaltender? You're going to let him continue to get pummeled every single time that he gets in there? How? Like, you risk a real danger that you're going to affect the kid's development and that it's going to significantly impact him in his career going forward. You just don't want that to happen. I don't see how they just sit there and pretend that, well, it's okay. We're not selling. We're going to be buyers. Like you've got to get some kind of help. This team's been screaming for a move. You need to make a move. Whatever it is, whether it's Therrien, then it's Therrien. If it's Yo, it's Yo. But you got to do something. You got to make some kind of trade. The players are dying for a change. They need some extra push from outside. They cannot motivate each other at this point. You have people on Twitter tweeting about Nolan Patrick flicking a puck 3 times. The guy was a -4 today. He's a 4th line center. This guy is, I mean, listen, I feel bad for the guy, but I'm sorry. I have zero interest in Nolan Patrick being a fourth line center on this team. If that's what he's going to be, forget it. Get rid of him. I don't care.
Yeah, it's a results driven business. Like, I don't feel bad for anybody but Lindblom, because the poor guy was doing great and got cancer and beat that. So it's like, you have to produce. And we'll go back to what you were saying about how the blame would be distributed. It's tough to, with the players are the players. I've had an issue with this core for quite a while. They're coach killers, and I never liked Hackstall. I don't think he's a good coach. I still believe that. But AV has been successful in 2 different cities, and he's done everything but win a cup, and he's come goddamn close. And to come here and then this happens, it's like, yeah, it's the core. They've always done this shit. They don't get up for big games. They tend to get blown out all the time. They turn over the puck like it's a lot. They treat the puck like it's a live grenade. Like, they don't know what to do with it. They can't wait to get rid of it. They don't. So when it comes to the blame, Fletcher for me is number 1, and it's not even hard. You constructed the team, and to see such a gaping hole like that, and how it's affecting your team, and then you're on top of that, you're not doing anything. I don't see how it can't be your fault. And he kind of like takes blame, but it's kind of one of those, like Andy Reid, like, I got to do a better job, and ultimately nothing changes. And nothing's going to change with this team or the mentality of these players unless somebody's head rolls. And whether it's Yo's guy, it's Yo because Fletcher brought him in, that was his guy, or Terrian, because you can't make a trade, I could see somebody going, because it's just too bad right now. If you can't make a trade, you fire the equipment manager, like the janitor down the hall, something, like, somebody's got to go. You have to show something that somebody gives a fuck about something, because this is embarrassing. And he better move mountains this offseason, because it is unbelievable how much he needs to do and fix. And there's certain players he needs to get out of here, whether it's Seattle or just flat out buys them out. And I totally agree with Patrick. Like, it's nice. He'll have this little spurt to the net. He hasn't finished. He can't finish, but you'll see people be like, he's coming around. He's doing good. It's like, how much time do we have to wait? Because it's a problem. I told Jimmy the other night, it's tongue in cheek when we've said we want him to just play a full, season, no injuries, no headaches, none of that. That's great. But when you're not producing and you're out there every single night, that's not a winning formula. It's not. And they need guys who can finish, who don't turn over the puck, defense especially. And you brought up Hart. He needs to play better. But his confidence is shit, and it's because of this defense. How's he supposed to get better with this defense? Is he supposed to turn into Dominic Hasek overnight? Like, I don't see how that's a thing. I think he would have been okay this year. He probably wouldn't have been as good as he was last year, whole sophomore slump thing. But how he's been hung out to dry, giving up 3 goals, and then none of them he can do anything about, and then he gives up a softie, and everybody blames him. No shit, his confidence is nothing. Like that. And you brought up a great point with the whole, how much damage are we going to do to this team and these players and their psyche going forward? We're gonna get through this season. Let's say Fletcher does move mountains. These guys are gonna have to mentally prepare.
PTSD.
Yes, exactly. Like, it's going to take some time before they're like, oh wow, I'm actually a real hockey player, and this is a real team. Like, it's unbelievable how many steps back this season is. And all the more reason that they might have to clean house with a couple, whether it's players or coaches or what. But if Dave Scott is serious about winning, he's seriously got to have a serious conversation, seriously, with Chuck Fletcher, and say, something needs to happen. You have to show these people something, because we're going to open up this arena next year. We want fans here. And us assholes are going to show up regardless, because we're assholes. But still, the team needs to win. Like, it is what it is, and this is
not giving his team a dime. So here's a question for you guys. We're talking about Hart a little bit here. How about just sending him to the minors? He still has he's still on his rookie deal, isn't he? He can go to the Phantoms, right?
Here's my problem with that. So, who theoretically, you're just bringing up Lyon?
Yeah.
Not Sandstrom or nothing though.
No, I guess you could, but I guess the sole purpose of it would be, if you put Hart to the minors, it's kind of showing showing you two things. I think it's showing that, hey, like, this is not going to be our year. And it's also kind of like, holy shit, we're so bad that our, young star phenom goalie is now playing with the Phantoms, and then on the flip side of that, hopefully, maybe some stress and pressure drops off Carter Hart. He takes his time to get his stuff together. You know what I mean? Instead of, worrying about going out and playing every other night.
I think he needs a leave of absence. Like, I think he just needs some time off. And I'm okay with Alex Lyon coming up because I don't want Sandstrom or any of our young goalies being subjected to this defense and what it could do to your psyche. If you're, hey, it's my first NHL game, I finally made it.
And you get lit the hell up.
I mean, like it's like when Rob Zepp came up and he like played in his hometown. I think, or his parents came to one of his games and he got lit up. It was like really embarrassing. At least he was like a 32-year-old goalie at the time. I don't want these young guys coming up, finally making it to the show and having that like dream quickly become a nightmare. And God forbid they play more than one game. Like there's nothing. I wouldn't want to put anybody in that situation. I'd rather than pick somebody off of waivers and just throw them in there if that's the case. And Hart being sent down, I don't know. That's like almost a slap in the face. I get it. It's not the worst thing in the world.
How's it a slap in the face, though?
So I don't know how Hart's going. He gets angry when he gets pulled sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, not so much anymore, but like when he was at first, and he's like, I'm being set down with this defense. Like, I get it. I have not played good, but like,
well, yeah. If you're his teammate,
why hasn't Ghost been sent down? Why hasn't Gus been sent down? Why hasn't what I mean?
They don't. Yeah, but they don't have the same contract. So here's my thing. Here's my thing, though. If you're his teammate and like Hart's not going to be happy to go down, you know that. And so seeing your like I said, your goalie get sent down because you're playing so bad, I don't know. There's got to be that can create some. Not that a spark is going to matter anymore, but it should start to turn some heads. Like, oh shit, like Carter Hart just got sent down. Like that wasn't supposed to happen this year. We were supposed to go to the playoffs and win a couple rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what's funny about that is I feel like if it was any other team, it'd have an effect. But these guys are pretty weak. I think they'd be like, oh, geez, I guess we won't see him for a while. So what are you doing after the game?
Yeah.
But that's the thing is like this is now a no-win situation here with this group of players.
Yep.
If you send Carter Hart down, there's going to be people who say, good, he needs a reset, get him away from here. Maybe the defense in Lehigh Valley will be a beacon of light for him.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be people saying, what are these guys doing? And it makes them look – I understand what your point is, Jim. You want to send a bit of a shakeup mentally to Carter. I think the best way is just to sit him. But the problem with that is then you're going to have Elliott in net for prolonged periods of time. And you know what? Elliott came in tonight, and it didn't help.
Nope.
So now you're going to lay Brian Elliott is going to be the sacrificial lamb, and he's going to have to pay for all the defense's sins here in in Philly. What do? Do you bring up Lyon? Because you bring up Lyon, and I get the point, but then people are going to say optimal lineup. AV's purposely wanting to lose games.
I know there's no win.
So, like, what are we supposed to do? Unless you bring in a goalie from outside and make a trade, and there's going to be teams out there wanting to dump salary. That's the only thing you can do.
Can you imagine Twitter when the Flyers acquire some kind of like secondary
goalie
and no defense? Like, oh my God, it'll be an absolute dumpster fire. And that's just it. It's still win no matter how you look at it, which is kind of me and Manny are kind of on the same page. Sit him, leave of absence, just chill for a bit. Any other goalie being brought up, everybody was so quick to hate on Hart, but you see now Elliott had played better before, but you're seeing with this downward death spiral, he's given up a lot of goals now too. Like it's the defense for all those who were still on the fence. It's the defense, and it's going to be no matter who's in net, it's going to be a problem. Only Hasek could give this team a chance in hell at the playoffs. And I know I've beaten that horse to death, but I truly believe it because he's the only guy I know who was so good with so little. And these guys are an absolute travesty. It's a joke. And Fletcher needs to step up and do something. I mean, we've seen minor moves be done in previous seasons with other teams and GMs and even our own team with Holgram or whoever, and nothing. Nate Prosper and Sam Moran are the biggest changes that this defense has seen. And it's like, that's really all you can do. There's not like some guy who's, a borderline free agent, could play in the AHL, NHL, anything. Ron Hainsey, is he still interested in playing? Anybody? Like, it's just the fact that nothing has happened. It makes me think a coach is going to get fired, because if you really can't do anything at all, I think the only thing you can do is fire somebody to show that you're angry, I guess, because the press conference didn't go well. And as you can see by tonight, it's still same status quo for the Flyers. Can't even stay in a game against division rivals who did this exact same thing to you last week. And we see they were a little more aggressive. They were hitting. They had 2 fights tonight. They still got smoked. So you need to fix the defense. So do something. So until that gets done, it's a no-win situation. Anything else, and unless you just flat out sell and say the season's over.
So I made a comment on Twitter earlier that if no one is fired tonight, that tells you all you need to know about the season. And so my whole reasoning for that is that if no one's holding Chuck to the fire if he doesn't fire somebody, because it's either like, Chuck, make a move or get rid of somebody, right? Like no one's pressuring him. And I guess I'm looking at it like, back in the day, Ed Schneider would have been breathing down his throat, right? Like, this is embarrassing. Like, this is my team, this is my business, and you're embarrassing me, right? Whereas now it's a corporation, right? Dave Scott, Comcast, just bring in the bucks, Chuck, bring in the money, make sure we got the positive at the bottom line, and all's well, right? If he doesn't fire anybody or make some kind of move, send somebody down, or somebody gets benched, that he's got a long leash, and that this year he's just going to kind of ride this year out. I don't think we're going to see a major move this year during the season. He's been quoted as saying he's going to make a move that is going to affect this team for the coming years, right? I don't think he's going to be able to get it done in season, so I imagine it'll happen after. And I'm just going to say it. I think we're just going to have to ride this one out, guys. It sucks because we were so excited. I just don't see it. Maybe he'll shed a salary. Maybe Gustafsson gets moved. I don't know who would want him. I don't think Ghost is going anywhere with that contract. The years on his contract make it tough to move him. Maybe if they give up a second or third for someone to take him, I don't know. I'm not sure. They could do it because based off what we read yesterday, 2021 picks aren't as desirable because of the scouting issues and whatnot. Maybe they can give up an earlier pick to get rid of Ghost. Who knows? What do you kind of think about that, man? Do you think you're on the same page with me there, or you think I'm thinking too much into it, that, this whole corporation thing and Ed Snyder and whatnot?
I think you're overanalyzing things there, Jim.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
I'm just kidding. No, there's listen, the ownership, when it's a corporation like that, living in Toronto, for the longest time, I mean, listen, they're owned by a corporation now anyways, or a couple of corporations. But before, the majority owner used to be the Teachers Pension Fund, was the majority owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Teachers Pension Fund. So the teachers basically paid money for their retirement fund, and they're like, we're going to buy the Leafs. They bought it, I don't know, it was like in the 70s, I think. And it was like dirt cheap. And then they sold it for over $1 billion or 1.5. Oh, it was great. Like they made their money back like times 1,000. So it was a great investment. But for years, all the fans in Toronto were like, as long as they keep making the playoffs barely, as long as they make money and idiots keep buying tickets and buying overpriced hot dogs and beverages, it doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change.
Yep. And,
I know that they're on the upswing now, but I mean, there was decades of just misery for the Toronto Maple Leaf fans. And I'm kind of starting to see that unless something changes here, I mean, you mentioned, Jim, you said something about this team ain't going to see a dime from me.
Yeah.
And Jack, you said that Flyer fans are really passionate and we're still going to fill the barn. I don't know, man. I think that it's a real dangerous game taking fans for granted. And you know what? The natives are restless. We want a change. We need something to happen. And if Chuck just basically sits in his office and flat cap, guys, expansion, blah, 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 can't do anything. And then free agency comes and goes. You can't get anybody. Why would anybody want to come here? This is not a prime destination anymore.
Mm-mm.
So you know what the issue is? Because I would agree wholeheartedly in a normal season, COVID and everybody being locked indoors. I think that's gonna at least at first. I think you're gonna see people rush to outdoor or anything outdoor, any event.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I would agree with you 100% because before COVID and they were trending downwards, we did see a dip in the attendance. But with all this going on, I think they're gonna, and maybe that's why they think they can survive this year. They're gonna get their Santa sacks and they're gonna get their season ticket holders, and maybe at first there'll be a little pushback. Ultimately, people are gonna want to get out. If the Flyers have any kind of like mild success, it's gonna, a couple of wins really, and then you'll be playing the entire league, and it won't be as bad. It won't be back to backs and all that stuff they're crying about. If they just run it back from this roster this year until next, that's going to be tough. I don't think they'll be having jam-packed houses, but I still think they'll have some big, good numbers, at least to start. And then we'll see what happens from there if they do anything and people get like, okay, I got out of my house. And you know what, though? I got the Sixers who are killing it right now, so I can go see them. They always go to the Eagles games. And then whatever the hell else, just going to bars might, or restaurants, that might overtake that as well. So I think there'll be an uptick at first, and the Flyers might think they can get through this season because of that. And then we'll see. Ultimately, some diehards will always go, but like you kind of alluded to, there has been a dip. We're not completely blind to whatever they do. But the thing is, like, we've seen everything up until today in the press conference, and there were still people actually defending Fletcher and shit. And it kind of like those people exist too, and that there's nothing you can do about them.
I'd feel guilty paying money to go watch this team. I'd feel guilty just being in that building, to be honest with you. That's how I feel right now. I feel dirty. Like, what am I doing in here? Like, it's just so weird. I've never felt like this about the Flyers before. Even in the Hackstall days, it was never I'm not going to give this team my money. It was just, I don't want to go watch this team. But now it's just, I feel like bad about giving this team my money. I feel like I'm being scammed a little bit, It's not, what we're seeing now is not really what we were told was going to happen. And something about it just feels wrong to me to number one, spend money on tickets. Like, even with this jersey hanging back here, I feel dirty. It just, something about this organization changed for me in the last, I don't know, couple months maybe. It just, something doesn't feel right. I still want to watch the Flyers. I still, it's Thursday night. Flyers are on at 7. They're playing the Rags. I'm supposed to be excited for that. But I've never felt, and I'm trying not to be dramatic because I've been told that I can be dramatic. But I swear, I just have this, how, like, I don't know if you guys have ever cheated in a relationship or whatever, but I have that dirty feeling, where I need to take a shower or something, or I can't look my significant other in the face, or I just feel disgusting. I'm starting to hate this team a little bit. I don't know how to explain it. That's just how I'm feeling right now. I just feel dirty watching the Flyers. I feel like I'm not supposed to do it.
After every game, I burn my clothes and I get
chew a pack of gum.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Are you guys getting any of that or what? You guys just normal people?
Totally understand where you're coming from. I'm at the point now where, like, I used to sit I have a chase, right? And you kind of lay on the chase. I used to sit on the end of it, so I'd be closer to the TV and I'd be like, all right, Flyers, let's go. Now I'm laying back, laptop on my lap, doing whatever, Twitter. I just scroll Twitter.
Yeah, you don't give a shit. Yeah, exactly.
And then my wife, like, she sits over here. She doesn't have to, like, warn me about cursing and yelling too loud anymore. Maybe at first, but I kind of see it coming. And like we'll be watching like Modern Family, which is a show I think is hysterical, right? And like, all right, it's 6:55. I'm going to jump over to the Flyers broadcast now. All that laughing was good, right? Now we're going to be pissed off the rest of the night. And it's been like the thing for like the last 3 weeks. Like I say it jokingly, and like it happens every time. It's unbelievable. It's like I'm getting to the point now. I'm like, why do I do this to myself?
Yeah, it's like masochistic. They're just not fun.
Yep.
And knowing every time. And like 9 times out of 10, yeah.
Terrible,
now it's 9 times out of 10 before the first period's over.
That's the frustrating thing, though, is like going into the season. I mean, I didn't have them winning the division, but I thought second, at worst, they're third.
Yeah.
Like at absolute worst. And like just the way they came out, in January, and you kind of saw in the fans, like half the fans were like, but they're winning, so who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So what, they're getting outshot? So what if they're getting outchanced? So what if JVR is lighting the lamp like a freak? But they just didn't look right. And a lot of the people that have been with this team through the ups and downs and for a long time have kind of we're pointing that out. They're like, look, this team just doesn't look right. There's something not right. There's something off here. And then just progressively getting worse and worse. And before, we used to have people in charge that would see these things and act and do something about it and right the ship, or at least try. And you know what? That's the thing with that sweater. That orange and white and black sweater is you put it on, and it's supposed to mean hard work, determination, tough to play against, doing what it takes to win. Identity. This team doesn't have it. I mean, when the Devils, I was listening to the Devils broadcast the other day on the radio, and even the broadcasters, the Devils are like, this team has no identity. What are they? They stink defensively. Their goalie can't save anything. They're not an offensive-minded team. They don't throw hits. They're not tough. What are they? Nobody knows who they are. These guys don't even know who they are. And I'm sensing the frustration online where people need a GM, somebody that's in charge to say, listen, it's not right. There is something rotten here, and we're going to fix it. Like some way, somehow, we're going to make a move. We're going to get something done. And that projects confidence to me. This thing about, listen, we like what we like our team. We're only 2 points back of the Bruins. Well, guess what? It's 3 now. The Bruins also have, 3 games in hand. We're still in it. We're not selling. When Chuck calls on the phone after next week and teams are going to be like, oh, sounds like you're selling now, eh, Chuck? Good. Here's what we're going to get from you. Like, he's going to be right over a barrel. Like, I don't understand the direction that this team is going in right now. They shouldn't have been this bad, but far earlier, something should have been done to try to address this in some fashion, and it just hasn't. And that's the frustrating thing. That's the disappointing thing. And that's why it's like, you know what? Why am I investing so much into this? The attitude at the top is, it's okay. We're still in the race.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Everything's fine. And then you know what? Boom, a pummeling again tonight. After your GM just basically went to bat for them and said, don't worry, I'm trying to get some stuff done. We're not selling any players. Don't worry, you guys are all safe. And they get pummeled again. And you know what? I guarantee you in the next 3-4 games, they're going to get another lashing again. And this is just the way that it is. If nothing's going to change, if there's no urgency from the leadership of this team, and I'm not even talking about Giroux or anything like that. I'm talking about the guys that make this roster and that make things happen, then this season is going to be lost. And unfortunately, they're going to be really losing some people that have been diehard followers of this team. It's easy to lose fans. It's hard to get them back. My dad still does not watch NHL hockey because of that strike.
Wow.
I know people that used to watch baseball. You know what? Baseball turned their back on us with that strike. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars to hit a ball, and run around a field. You know what? Forget them. And they don't go back.
I respect that.
It is, and it's hard. But I mean, if this is the attitude that this team's going to have, yeah, don't worry. Well, it's a flat cap. Well, it's expansion. Well, then people are going to make decisions and going, oh yeah, well, your parking's too expensive.
Yeah.
Well, the ticket prices are going up again.
Yep.
Well, it's too expensive for me to bring my family to a game and enjoy it, have a good time.
Yep.
People are going to make decisions. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't get this urgency. I know Chuck's playing poker right now. It's the trade deadline's coming up, and you don't want to project weakness and stuff. And I wasn't expecting anything earth-shattering in this press conference, but he kind of needed to have this press conference a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he didn't.
Just
bit late.
To piggyback off that, you know what my dad said to me today? Because my wife and I are expecting, and we did have an appointment today. So that I was talking about that with my dad, then the game came on. And he just goes, Jack, how are you or no, he said, you're going to have a hell of a time getting your son to be a big Flyers fan, aren't you? Because when I came up, I had Eric Lindros and Leclerc and Renberg and Brendan Moore, and I had all of them, and he's like, so who you got? I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know. I guess he'll just be wearing it from birth, and he'll be disowned if he does anything else. Because how am I going to make him like this team?
It's so true, though, dude.
They don't care about the fans. Like, they
legitimate
don't
question.
I mean, they got 5 years, as far as I'm concerned, to turn shit around before he starts becoming somewhat cognizant of what hockey is. Because I plan on having him there as soon as possible. Maybe I can hold off a bit because I don't want to hurt his psyche as well. He'll be right up there with Provorov and Hart.
Dude, as funny as that was, that's actually like a legit, like, it's a big, I got you. Like, you had Lindros growing up. Who's your kid going to have, Shit, man. I think about that a lot. Like, maybe because this team's just been so bad, but growing up, we were really kind of spoiled, man. They would go out and get a guy on top of Lindros, Leclerc. They'd go out and get a guy like even if he was, a little bit over the hill and overpaid, it was still fun to watch.
It feels spoiled. But when you look at the Flyers' history, you had the 3 years in the 60s where they were an expansion team. So whatever. 70s was their golden era. They won 2 cups. They had Clark. They had Perrant. They had everybody. The 80s, they had these crazy good teams. They went to 3 Stanley Cups, really, and they lost to 2 different dynasties all 3 times. You know what I mean? Gretzky, the Islanders. They had crazy good teams. They just didn't win the cup, but they still had awesome teams. They had a little dip in the early 90s. Then we had Leclerc, Lindros, Legion of Doom, Hextall, Desjardins. We went to the Cup in 97 against another dynasty, and then the early 2000s, Richards and Carter and them, they got us to a cup. And even before that, in the early 2000s, we were always like an Eastern Conference finalist. Like, were we spoiled, or was that just where the bar was? Because for my lifetime, that's where the bar was. We didn't accept much less. There was a couple dip years where you had to recalibrate, retool, and get back to it. And I understand that was a non-salary cap time, but even with the salary cap era, we did pull our shit together after one bad season, and the next season we were in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then in 2010 we were in the finals. Game 6, mind you, against, what do you know, another dynasty. And that was the status quo, was we didn't accept less. And right around 2014, it's been the worst brand of hockey, really, for 6-7 years that in the franchise's history. And even in some of their worst years, they weren't getting blown out like this, or at least on a daily basis, at least in the biggest games. So we are watching, in my mind, what is essentially the worst history in Flyers hockey. And now I got to bring my son into this and try to make him be a fan. If that's not a massive red flag to Fletcher and Dave Scott and whoever else supposedly gives a shit, I don't know what is.
I'm glad that you mentioned the history of it, because it really bothered me when I think it was Jordan Hall who asked Chuck, and he said, listen, you got to remember that there's a pattern here, right? I don't know if it's Hall or Sealski the Weasel, one of those guys. He goes, listen, this team makes the playoffs one year, miss it the next. Make it, miss it. They've been alternating for like 8 years now, right? And Chuck stopped him right there, and he went, "Well, I've only been here for 2 years."
Yeah.
And I right when he said that, I said, "You know what, dude? I don't want to hear that, because if you don't respect this history of this franchise and what this team used to be, this team is degenerating. This franchise is becoming a laughing stock. This is the worst period of Flyers hockey ever. Ever. This team got rid of Mike Richards and Jeff Carter because they like to drink beer and chase girls.
God forbid.
These guys can't play hockey. They give the puck away to guys wearing the opposite colored uniforms, and we can't get rid of them. We sign them. We re-sign them. We give them extensions. I don't understand what this team. You have to appreciate the history of this team. You have to understand what this team has been through throughout its history, from the very beginning, as Jack said, to the Lindros era, to the Richards era, and now it feels very different. It just feels so different, and I'm not liking it too much, man. Like, I still like it, but I pine for those other times, man.
I hear you.
They chased these other guys out of town because they drank beers, and
Goddamn shame.
Now lots of beers, but still, and these guys can't, like, they get pummeled. 3 of the last 5, nothing happens. Nothing.
Now they're locked in their rooms and they're getting their asses whooped. Maybe they ought to be chasing girls. Maybe that is the problem.
I mean,
they can't even chase the puck. I mean,
yeah, right. Tell me if I'm a little bit wrong here, because I'm known to be a little bit harsh. I'm known to be a little bit judgy. I kind of, look for things to pick at a little bit. But when someone gives an answer like Chuck Fletcher gave, well, I've only been here for 2 years, does that kind of sound like a loser to you a little bit? Like, it just sounds like a loser thing to say to me. Like, I don't want the guy that's in charge of everything talking like that, because that kind of stuff trickles down, and only because that's what he expects from the other guys. He accepts that from other people, or you know what I mean. It's just such a weasel thing to say, and I'm not sure I like that. There was a couple things that he said during his press conference that irked me a little bit. Not enough to complain about, but I pick at guys in his position. I'm going to pick at, because you don't really hear from them too often. So when they slip with something, or they give you a snippet to run with, I will. And that was one of those things. I'm glad you brought it up. That when he said that, I'm like, we know you've only been here for 2 years. Like, that wasn't the question. It was one of those things that bothered me. I don't want my GM talking like that. I don't know.
There was a couple of questions that were yes or no questions where he went straight to the excuse soundboard.
Yeah. Like, why, dude? Why? You have the press conference. Like, you decided to do it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know, man.
His confidence level is that of Hart's. That's why. And it's like, I know I have to do this, so I'll just get through it, and they'll forget about it, and they'll probably we'll be exactly as, complacent as we were before, so he just was like, I just got to get through this. And it's really bad. He knows it's bad, and he's got to talk to us. He's not going to admit anything, which is why these things are pretty much a waste of time.
Yeah. And
anybody who came out and defended him, it's really stupid and silly in my eyes. And nothing's going to change unless everybody comes down on this team. Like, yeah, this is enough. Like, show us something, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
But we can't go to games, so how can we really show our discontent? We just bitch a lot, tweet everything.
Yeah, it's true. Well, Flyers are now second worst in the NHL with 119 goals against, guys. We know the defense is bad. We know the goaltending's had its troubles. We know the roster's flawed. We know the coaches are having some issues. There's really nothing else to say. Another 8-3 loss to the Rangers after the 9-0 ass whooping they got on St. Patty's Day. Manny.
Trending in the right direction.
Yeah, they only lost by 5 this week. They gave up 8 instead of 9.
Two really good games. I think one of them was a loss, if not both, but they were good efforts. They were losses.
Yeah. Put a little positive cherry on top of a shitty overall night.
Those
Manny,
are
thanks
our
for
options: get blown out or just barely lose.
yeah. Manny, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter and where they can find your work?
All right. All my articles up at brotherlypuck.com and Twitter at Manny Benavides. I'm not going to spell it out because I get ragged on for spelling it out, and it's too long, and I need to change my tags. So then I guess I'll maybe if the Flyers actually start winning games, I'll get a contest going, and you could rename my Twitter hashtag or whatever.
Oh, there you go. That's an idea.
Yeah.
If Flyers can give up less than 5 goals, Manny will change his Twitter hashtag.
Yeah, there you go.
Twitter. Jack, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter, and we'll sign off for the night.
I am at Jack. That's JACK _HW Radio.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's going to do it for us tonight, boys and girls. Unfortunately, we got together under crappy circumstances. Flyers did lose 8-3. They'll be back at it again Saturday against the same team. Hopefully, they get a win. Who knows? We'll be back next week. I think Tuesday or Wednesday next week. They have the Sabres twice. We'll have to figure out when we're going to be back. But yeah, make sure you listen to us on Spotify or Apple. Thank you to our affiliates, Belly Up Sports and Full Press Coverage. We'll be back next week, guys. Thanks for tuning in.